Hi, everybody. I'm LeOnna.
And I'm Lucy Hage, and we're just we're gonna kind of goof off and tell our stories, and hopefully have some guests and tell other stories of how we ended up where we are in our careers and how we ended up in real estate. And I think that we can learn a lot from each other. So I'm hoping by us telling our stories and our trials and our successes that we can inspire some others to do what we've done.
Yeah, and I love it. And I really like the idea that you have, Lucy, about sitting down and talking to people and sharing their stories, because sometimes that feeling of being overwhelmed, or maybe I dream of doing this, but must not be for me. Maybe it's for them, but it's not for me. I couldn't do something like that. To be able to hear the stories and see maybe where other people have come from and the things that they did do to get over it, and maybe how they surprised themselves. So again, anything we can do to help anyone else out there achieve their dreams, hopefully by sharing and laughing with you and being vulnerable and strong and showing all our sides, will help make your world feel more possible.
I'm really excited that we're finally getting to make this a reality and have a podcast and do our videos like we're supposed to. And I thought a great way, I know we're going to have lots of topics planned, but it's just telling our story, because everyone has an interesting story of why they got in real estate or how they ended up where they ended up in their career. And LeOnna, I can't believe that we've worked together almost a year now and I don't know your story.
Isn't that funny?
So, I know you have lots of fun background and different things you did before you got into real estate, but can you tell us how you got into real estate and why?
I would love to, Lucinda. It's been a journey. It's been a journey. So yes, I was going to be a movie star, just so you all know. I did
Well, now
practice.
you are.
Yeah,
Now, this is going to go viral and you're going to be a movie star.
I practiced my signature.
There you go.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
It is. I've so many years.
So
we'll
do an on air autograph later. So it'll be the first one.
I love it. Yes, I, against all odds, was going to be a movie star. And so I started, I graduated early and then went with a dance troupe and got a scholarship. And I was like, yes, I'm on my way to stardom, right? And danced in Bellingham for a while. And then they got a world tour. So after about a year and a half there, I came back to Seattle. And then I joined another dance company, Marco Pochard. And it's so funny when you're young, how you don't know how awesome some of the things are that you did. Like later I went back and I looked up Marco Pochard and I'm like, he was amazing. No,
You're like, I didn't know how special this was.
I didn't. It was so cool. And so I talked my way into their dance company, and then I danced and performed with them. And then I talked them into moving the whole troupe to California. So then we were in California for a little while, and they all kind of decided maybe this California wasn't for them. And I was like, I'm home. I'm here to my stardom. So I stayed. And then was just really blessed. I got to dance and perform for a lot of people. So one of my heroes was Ben Vereen. So I got to work and dance and audition with him in Seattle. And then Janet Jackson, really amazing, one of the most challenging auditions I've ever done. And then I got to dance at the Hollywood Bowl for Gene Kelly with Doc Severinsen. I know I say Gene Kelly and people are like,
know these things. No, I know who Gene Kelly is.
Thank you. Yes. I realized my age at that point. And that was really fun. And I was doing a film at that time. And, you just feel like you're going where you want to go. And then I realized later, I was like, oh, wow, I'm not a star. I have no retirement. And I don't want to live on a box on the side of the road. Maybe I should get a career or something that pays the bills. So
have a backup plan.
Yeah, backup plan, just a little. So anyway, we were near 9/11, and my mom worked in a military building. And so I wanted to move back. I thought, okay, I got to be back close to family. At that point, so many people were doing film and video on their own. And then I came back and I tried mortgage. No, not my thing. I honor our mortgage people. And then eventually I found myself in title and escrow and pregnant with my first baby.
Oh,
Oh, it was the best thing ever. And then I started working with John L. Scott actually at the time, and I was introducing a very new idea called transaction coordinator. So I introduced that to 3 different companies and then had my child and went, oh my Lord, I don't want anyone else to raise her. It was so precious. And so the drive to be able to be with my family and be in a profession that I was really proud of and that was challenging, because life gets so boring if you're not challenged. And there's nothing in the world that can challenge you like real estate. I really just don't think. So it's been a blessing every day. And I was able to raise my daughter, and then I had my son. And so that's what led me into real estate. And then I feel like the most blessed person ever to get to be here. We have the most loving group of people led by you, Lucinda, with such a big heart.
I'm so glad that you ended up here with us. I love the story of how you ended up here with us, because it was our corporate office was trying to recruit you.
Yes.
And then you ended up deciding to move to Oregon, and your Stormy kept sending your info to me. She's like, you should talk to her. You should talk to her. And
Yes.
then you just hit right time when we needed someone. So
And for my world too, it was the perfect time. So yeah, your drive for excellence and commitment to moral standing and working with a heart and empathy is exactly where I needed to be. And I'm sorry, I don't feel that is in every company. I've met so many companies, and I can love and respect so many companies, but Lucinda, what you've created here is amazing. So
you.
I want to know how you got to where we get to be here and I get to work with you.
Well, it's kind of a whirlwind. I have to think back sometimes, like, how did we end up here? Everybody says, well, was your family in real estate? And think that I inherited it or, came from a background. And I actually had never thought about being in real estate. I didn't really identify with the idea of a real estate agent when I was younger, because where I grew up, there wasn't really real estate agents. People didn't sell their homes. You inherited your home when, ranches were passed down from family to family, and you just didn't even hardly see for sale signs out. So it wasn't something I had thought about when I was younger. I actually, for a long time, wanted to be a vet when I was a kid, and then I was going to be, but I remember back when I was probably about 8 years old, I always really liked playing office with my sisters. And we would, if we were going to buy anything, we always had to order it, because I grew up like 100 miles from the nearest town. So you didn't go shopping, you could order. And Viking, do you remember like the Viking office supplies? They used to send you the huge catalog. So everybody always talks about the wish book, Sears wish book. Well, mine was the Viking office supply catalog. I had a passion for it, and everybody knows now too, buying office furniture. I love to buy office supplies. And so I would get that, and I wanted an executive desk really bad when I was a child. And so I had saved my money, and I went to the post office with my mom and got a money order, and I ordered it through the mail from Viking. And this huge semi came out to our ranch one day, and he rolled up the door. I remember it was the only thing in there, because I was probably the only one in that town that had ever ordered anything like that. And they had to send a special truck because they had free delivery.
Oh,
and
that's
I got
so
my
precious.
executive desk that was all, it was just like prefab, and it had to be put together, and my dad was a contractor and helped me put it together. And I think they still have that desk there, because it was so big it had to be put together in the room it was in, and it couldn't get moved out unless you took it apart. But I think that was the start of me really, as a child, dreaming of being an entrepreneur. And I would play like office and be, I don't know if I was really, my mom said I played being the boss, but I don't remember ever having anybody to boss around. So I don't know what I was a boss of, but I would write memos. I had a typewriter, and I would write notes and letters. And so I think there was a passion in me from the beginning for that, but I went on to a lot of different things, and I worked in the hospitality industry. I worked in landscaping. I got my EMT license and worked in I was going to be a paramedic and do that. And then ended up getting married and moving to, Yamhill, just outside of Yamhill County when I was in my early 20s. And he didn't really like me pursuing that paramedic career. as it was really tough hours
Yeah.
and probably because I was going to be around firefighters and doctors all day. He didn't like that. So he's like, you know what you should do? He's like, you should get into real estate. My sister's in real estate and she's making, lots of money. The market was booming then. I think it was '05.
Oh yeah.
Then when we were, we had that big boom in '05 and I was like, well, I don't know anything about sales. I'd never thought of having a sales job or anything like that. But he had bought the course because he was going to do it. And it was about to expire. It's still when you got a box of books and you went through the books and then you'd go and take the, tests every week somewhere. I think it was like pro schools. And
we had to have done it about the same time.
Probably,
Yeah.
yeah. I think when we talked our licenses, we licensed about the same time. Yeah. So I was just really new to it, but it was easy breezy after going through medical school. That I was like, oh, multiple choice. This is awesome. I was like, I can do this. So I think I took the course in about less than 3 months and got my license. And then thought, I went and did the thing where you applied. I applied at a bunch of different offices thinking that I was going to have to interview to get hired, not knowing that everybody wants to hire you.
Right.
And it's one of those things where you're interviewing them. But I found an office in McMinnville. I really, really liked the broker. Like, she was very professional and went through the whole interview process. And it was a woman-run company, and really everybody was just so sweet when I went there. And it was a Coldwell Banker office. And I remember my only experience I did have is I had an aunt that lived in Seattle that was a commercial broker for Coldwell Banker. So when I was telling my parents my places I interviewed, my dad's like, well, Aunt Susan works for Coldwell Banker. That's a nice brand. That's a good brand. And so I took the job there, and I've been with the brand ever since then. And I knew right away when I got in that the sales side of it was not my passion, but I loved helping. I had some amazing agents around me that helped me grow my career in my broker and what she did. And she was a retired teacher, so she very much had a passion for training and teaching. And she just did a fabulous job mentoring me. I really felt like that's what I wanted to do. And the first year, she said, you do a business plan, because she wanted us to be organized and treat it like a business. And I put in my 5-year plan that I wanted to be an owner or, a manager at the very least by my 4th year. Wow. And I didn't really know how I was going to get there. And I didn't really tell anybody else but her. And along the way, what happened is I ended up moving and going to a different Coldwell Banker office that was closer to my home, in my 3rd year, or I was just coming into my 3rd year in real estate. And I was doing really well as rookie of the year, had a large number of sales, got in with a builder, did a lot of new home construction sales. I really loved working with seniors. I had a great referral business building up, and then the market tanked.
Oh, yeah.
Like middle of my 3rd year, and I'm like, what is happening here? Nothing's selling. Prices are dropping. Nobody likes you anymore. Like, you went from being a hero to like, oh, your fees are too much and you can't get my house sold. So I was like, I don't know if I want to do this.
By the banks at that time too, they'd start.
Right. And I had joined the Coldwell Banker here in Newburgh, which was run by Chris Horn, who was another fabulous mentor. And she did an amazing job training. She was so positive, and she'd been through bad markets, and she just stayed positive the whole time as it was shifting and helping all of us. And we had to downsize. We were at one point the largest Coldwell Banker on the West Coast. And definitely the biggest office in town. To the recession, like, I think we went from being probably 60 agents down to 16 agents by the time we moved into the space downtown, which we loved. Like, she was so positive about it. Like, we went from 5,000 square feet down to 1,200 square feet. And she's like, yeah, but look at all the places. We can go have lunch. We can just walk out the door and there's lunch and lunch. And like, she's like, I've always wanted a storefront window. I mean, we had a beautiful craftsman building. We down to this little space. She's like, but now we can paint the window at Christmas. Like, she always found that. So I don't remember even though the downturn market made it tough, fortunately, I was very financially conservative, and I just went to work every day. And then at the time, my husband at the time lost his job. He'd been at a machine company for 15 years, really good job, and they decided to outsource to another country. So he came home. I came home one day, and his toolbox was on the front porch because that's machinists had their own toolbox. And I looked and I said, "Did you lose your job today?" And he goes, "They're closing." And he said, "Yeah." He said, everybody lost their jobs today. And I just remember getting back in my car and going back to the office. And I don't think I was like, "I don't want to be here." That's a bad day. And I need to go back to work. So I just did open houses and, sold foreclosures and learned to do short sales and just went to work every day. But in that process of really hustling and becoming the breadwinner for a while, it was really how I was right in my 4th year when Chris needed help and she needed a partner. And I had been coming in every day and helping train agents and work with the agents, that it was just a natural fit. And I became her partner and then slowly bought her out over the next couple years. And a lot of things changed in my life and ended up getting a divorce and had, all this. I just devoted all my time to pouring it in. And I, a lot of times just worked till 9-10 o'clock at night here in the office until the market started returning and we grew in agent size. We were down all the way, I think, to about 7 agents when we got to the bottom of things, and then just slowly started growing it again. And I think that's why it was so personal. It's so personal to me because for a long time, that was the only family I had. Like my family I have a wonderful family, but my family lives so far away that my real estate family really was my family. They were the people I saw every day. And, we helped each other financially through bad times. And, Chris is definitely my family. She, even though she's kind of retiring now, you still, I think of her as family because I wouldn't have probably stayed in this industry without people like her in my life mentoring me. And
what a blessing.
And her positivity through really difficult ups and downs in this business taught me that. I mean, I still struggle like with mindset when bad things happen or disappointments happen, but I just remember, I remember probably the worst year we had where we barely could pay the bills. Like, I think her and I both pooled our money to even pay rent one December but there was like one sale for 2 months. Like you looked around in the top companies, they were like 1-2 sales a month. There was just nothing happening.
That had to have been like 07, 06 to 07.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
and
because
I remember she wanted to have a Christmas party anyway, and we pooled our money together to buy a Christmas tree and decorate the office, and we had a potluck Christmas party. And I just remember very vividly. I have a picture of her and I decorating the window, and just like you would just never know. We were broke. I didn't know if we knew how we were going to pay the rent the next month. But I just remember enjoying the camaraderie and the love and the passion for helping others grow. And it was so at that time, I think when you go through that experience, there's a lot of abundance in this industry where people think agents are making a lot of money. And when you get to that point where a sale is the difference between you having a home and not having a home, next month for an agent, and you can help them get that sale, being on the management side of helping them close that deal or get that next lead that's going to pay their rent and feed their kids. It really changes your perspective on what you're doing when you're helping. And not that it's not that way always, where we're doing this to feed our families, but at that time there was no other jobs. Right now, there's a lot of people have a plan B. I'll go get another job.
Because they're all hiring too, and they're feeling rather
desperate. During that
desperate.
time, you couldn't get another job.
Oh, thank you.
So there was no plan B.
Yes.
I had to make it work. A lot of them had to make it work, and we were a really tight group of folks that we knew what we had to do every day, and you had to come in and grind away. And once the market tipped, I feel like I had built up a really good work ethic and team, and it was just me and Chris. And after I bought her out, it was just me for a while before I hired my first employee to help. And then we started recruiting and growing, and I got remarried and started opening a second office of the McMinnville office. And then I found out I was pregnant. So that was fun, little twist, because I didn't think I was going to have children. And so opening an office while pregnant and balancing all that was interesting. And then having Laura and trying to manage and run it by myself with one part-time employee was difficult, but it was really good because I had a really strong team around me that was very supportive. And I love same thing. I wanted to raise my own baby. Was blessed to be able to have someone help me. But for a lot of the time I brought her to work with me and she sat in her playpen while I taught classes and trained agents and went on recruiting appointments. And I had an agent the other day, so I remembered that I showed up to the recruiting appointment with her in her little carrier. So, that's something about this industry that I always thought when I ever thought about getting out of it is I thought there isn't something that is as flexible as that.
I agree.
There's very few, and that's why I've always wanted with my employees, I wanted to give them that same opportunity where they could bring their dog to work or bring their kids if they had to, and have that environment. Not that it's always perfect, but give that opportunity to somebody else, because that was a really amazing opportunity for me to be able to have and build a career and be an entrepreneur and still get to be a mom and have some balance in my life of being able to control my destiny, but also have my child with me at the same time. So now it's kind of like, I guess like that. So I'd say the rest, it's a long story in some ways, but then that's the Reader's Digest version of how we got here. And now we're 6 companies and over 100 agents. And it just kind of was after McMinnville was a domino effect of growth, why the market just kept getting better. And I started learning how to acquire offices, and our brand is really amazing about helping with growth through acquisitions. And just, I feel like I grew too fast for a little while there, and I didn't really understand all the pitfalls of it, because for a long time I never experienced an agent leaving. I never experienced employee turnover.
And we hit a market kind of like what happened in 06, 07. I mean, I know it was different because the lending issue wasn't the reason that it was happening, but we were right back in that situation. And I can understand how it because you put so much of your heart and soul into it, that not having experienced that from that leadership role, but how wonderful that you got to have Chris really show you how to do that. And that was what was so lovely in meeting you, because the market was shifting. And I remember talking to you even, and we both immediately knew this was an opportunity, right? Yes, things are changing and things could be looked at as hard, but it's an opportunity. And I love that about you. That was another censure. Like, this is someone I can partner with. We can make things happen.
And I knew that it was I think I told you this too. One of the most important things to me is like when growing the company was having smart growth that we could maintain even in a downturn market. I wanted to always be able to maintain our infrastructure for a lot of reasons, because what I watched and what happened there is so many companies didn't plan for it to ever stop. They thought that boom was going to keep happening, and they overextended financially, and they didn't plan for what would happen if the market changed. And not that I'm prepared for everything, obviously was not prepared for what happened, having to all of a sudden go home and work from home and go virtual for a year and wear masks at work and deal with all of that we did. And I honestly thought that everything, I was like, this is going to take us out. Like, this is going to be the end of, but I love, what it has become, but the important thing to me is to be able, I feel this great responsibility, even though, people can get other jobs, but we're going through that and knowing how the employees that we had to lay off, I mean, it wasn't my company, Chris had to lay off, they couldn't find jobs for over a year and they didn't have jobs. And I never wanted to overextend to where if we had a market shift, I would have to let someone go because I didn't plan ahead. And I probably am militant too much to that, because
Amen. Thank you.
But I went without a paycheck for years when I started this. Everybody thinks it's really glamorous being a manager. Well, I didn't make any money for a long time, but I did because I wanted to invest it back in the growth, so that if I did build this up and get to where we are now, I didn't want to be taking pictures off of walls and shrinking into smaller spaces and handing people their pink slip because I didn't plan for the future. And that's something that I always like to be reminded and go back. And I've kept that picture of us decorating that window because I always want to be reminded like where we came from and how quickly it can all go away and change and shift. And
almost overnight.
I think in any business, I mean, any business, I look at all the businesses that weren't as fortunate as our industry during COVID, and they lost their business and they had to lay employees off. And
even now I'm looking at businesses that did this crazy split, right? And they were like, oh, 90%, 95%, and then 100%. It all sounds really dreamy until all of a sudden that business just evaporates because they have nothing to as a foundation, nothing to continue to have. I know they already usually cut out support once you get that higher split, and you don't get the marketing, and you don't get some of those things. And I know that because business was so easy, it felt like that was the way to go. But boy, you talk about planning ahead. It was all of a sudden that shift. And I saw these people with these crazy splits running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Like, we don't have the 400 sales this month to give me that little 5% to keep running, And then you end up in that situation. I don't have anything to offer you. Or all of a sudden I don't have a home for you to come work at.
That's the other side of, not just having to take jobs away and opportunities away. It's about not being able to support the agents either to do their jobs. So the consumer suffers, the agent suffers.
Yes.
Because when you get into a changing market and they have fewer sales, it's great, yes, to have a lower commission split, right? They get to keep more of their money, but it's also, they don't have the money coming in to support hiring their own team to be behind them.
Right, or paying for marketing.
It's really important for me to be able to maintain that. So when they do have slower months, they can still continue their marketing. They can still continue having admin support. They can still have their transaction coordinators waiting for them when they get a deal. They can still have all of those things available to them, because what I saw a lot, and even myself as an agent selling during the recession when the market was really poor, I had to carry listings for over a year. Listings just weren't selling. So you'd have, a whole roster, and I had new construction. I had to keep advertising them for months and months and months and months of paying ads that I didn't get any return. And sometimes you never got the return. Literally, some of those homes they filed bankruptcy on, and they went back to the bank. So I think it's good to remember that. Like my dad always says, well, he loved history, and he said, you read history so that you know what's coming, because history repeats itself.
so smart.
I think it's important for agents. There's so many agents that got into the industry over the last 5-6 years that don't remember that. And I work with Tom Ferry, and Tom's for the last 3 years has been telling agents, pay your bills, pay your taxes, and stockpile cash. He's like, just save your money, stop buying dumb things, don't overextend yourself, because he knew the shift was coming. And the agents that didn't prepare, companies that didn't prepare, and it just breaks my heart when I see companies did not prepare for even a little dip. And companies did close during COVID because they couldn't even make it through the first couple months until we saw that uptick in sales. They couldn't make it through that 30 days of being closed.
Right.
And it's always been important to me to be smart with it. I, of course, make a ton of mistakes, and we all, think it's never going to change like when things are good.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important for all entrepreneurs to at least have a mentor that's experienced those times, if not. And that's what I love about the team that we have now. I feel like all of our management and a lot of our staff has gone through those changes and can help mentor those agents that haven't experienced that, and what they're going to have to do now to sell, and what they're going to have to do now to
create the relationships.
Yeah, to create the relationships, to rebuild when they've lost that flow of business that they had.
Yeah, or not even know what it originally takes. We were so blessed over the last 3 or 4 years, really, to have so much business come to us that it wasn't like when we started 18 years ago. It was very different. We did have to do cold calls and belong to every group in town and build your network and get to know everybody and market yourself. It was a full-time job. I'm going to say probably more than a full-time job. And it's so funny because I think sometimes people look at real estate agents and they think, oh, it's so glamorous. I'm going to drive a fancy car and then I get to eat
Right.
bonbons. And really it's be ready to go 24/7. You know, I had no idea, but you really are putting in that energy, and it's not always, but it's those times. And so I think that it was a real shock for a lot of the new people because they hadn't had to experience the kind of work that went into growing at that time. So,
Well, and I think some of the best advice I got when I got into it, because I very much thought I was getting into a sales position, and it scared me. I didn't want to be in sales. I was very introverted. I didn't like talking in front of people. I know.
that is so surprising. I'm like, excuse me.
So what happened?
Who am I
I've
sitting here
overcome
with?
my weaknesses.
Yes, I think so.
But I used to like realtor tour. If you had to go and you had to stand, it used to be, there was, 20, 30 people there, so
Yes.
agents there sometimes to go on realtor tour. And I remember getting nauseous before I would even go in because I was going to have to stand up and introduce myself every time, because you always had to go around the room and introduce yourself, let alone talk about a property when you were in there. I hated
It's
it.
amazing.
Yeah. So it's that part of it. It was really a struggle, mindset of it, going from, okay, I'm not really in sales, even though I know folks will argue
Agreed.
with me because it is sales. But to me, it's once I shifted my mindset, and Zig Ziglar I loved anything with Zig Ziglar because he would always talk about how it's about relationships and
Thank you.
people.
Absolutely.
And once I realized it was about really helping people, and it didn't even matter if you got to help them in a home sale. And then once I shifted over to management, it was really about helping people grow.
Yeah.
And if I had to go back and think this was sales, I would not like it. And every once in a
Agreed.
while, I feel like we shift over that mindset a little bit, especially when the market got really busy and we just felt like we're churning out stuff. And
Yeah.
I almost didn't like it. And
I'm
then
with
when I
you.
got to get back to like, okay, now we have to coach and strategize and help each other and pull together. And I almost think it's a blessing for our industry when we go through a little shift, because it reminds us all what this is really about.
Yeah.
And it's about relationships and helping people. And
And it's not always about the sale.
no,
It's about the connection and helping and educating and empowering. And then that you somehow find your way to the people that need you. I agree with you 100%. When somebody said, so I had a friend in LA who had AIDS before we even really knew what it was. And I had come back, I was in Santiago, I was in Chile, living for a little while, and I heard he was very sick. So I came back and I was working because I wanted to plan on my friend living forever. And I remember asking really wealthy people, I was like, okay, so this office stuff is not for me. Like I come in, I reorganize everything, and then I have nothing to do, and then I'm ready for something. I said, what do I do? How do I go out and make a great living? Do I become a doctor? Should I become an attorney? I said, what are the things? And I would talk to these very, very wealthy people. And they were like, well, you could do sales, import export, not import export, I have no idea what that is, sales. And I was like, oh gosh, knock knock, Britannica, do you want to buy some books?
you're like, I don't want to do that. I want to sell vacuums. Every once in a while, when I get frustrated, though, I do tell people, I'm just going to go sell Mary Kay. So,
Yes.
I think I'm channeling that today with the pink.
I was going to say, I wanted one of those pink cars.
Yeah, I want a pink car.
Yes.
But even in those type of sales jobs, I think that if you look at it from the standpoint of providing value to
Agreed.
someone's day, even if it is Mary Kay, like whatever it is that you can change someone's life by providing that value. That was our long story short there of how we got into the business. We probably got a little long-winded there. But it was fun. It was really fun to hear your story. I knew you had a history in dance, but I love that, your family led you into real estate. And it was definitely, I think that's something I would love to hear all of our agents' backstories like that. You probably could make a whole season of folks' backstories, but on how it's helped them in their career.
And
now
I
in
think
real
your
estate.
life too, actually. The challenges, I am who I am today because of the challenges I've got to encounter in real estate. And I just don't know if I would be who I am today without it. And so I think as challenging as it can be, there's once you're pushed to your max and you think, that's it, I can't go any further. It's when you can round the corner and you're off and running. It's so
Well, I
empowering.
always say in real estate, after 5 years, you should get an honorary psychology degree because you have dealt with people in like every phase of
Existence.
breakdown in their life, and you've had to
Yes.
counsel them through it. You become, a marriage counselor, a therapist, a family counselor,
Stress and anxiety.
So we could call this the Dr. Lucy and LeOnna show.
That's great. Yes, I think so.
Because we should have like 3 honorary psychology degrees after all the years
actually
we've been in real estate. So, no, but it's really fun hearing that. I can't wait to dig in at some more stories of, how we grew our businesses and other folks have, and hopefully share and learn from each other.